I'm Hannah Cunningham, Marketing Director at Cisilion, and I'm joined by Cisco UK Partner CTO Rob Price. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Rob, when Cisco launched intent-based networking, it was all about reinventing the network. So why was this necessary?
Well, the basic premise, of course, is that if you're reinventing something, it's probably because it's no longer fit for purpose. Well, we still need to build out our underlying network infrastructure. We still need our switches, our routers, our access points, etc., etc. The difference now is we're going to overlay onto that infrastructure a software fabric. And that's really important because it's at that layer, that software fabric layer, that we will now apply our policies and our intent, as in intent-based networking. What that will allow us to do is have a single intent. Maybe that intent is to change the security policy of an application or of a user, or maybe change the priority of a user or an application, and simply apply that policy once to the fabric from a controller, and then have that policy pushed down into all of the underlying infrastructure underneath. That has the benefit then of reducing massively the complexity of applying changes, which means they're much easier to do, which means we can make far better use of our network infrastructure than we could have in the past.
Makes sense. So Rob, one of the key benefits Cisco talked about when launching intent-based networking was all around cost control. So can you elaborate a little bit for me more on that?
I can, and that's a really important point that you make, Hannah. So the statistics tell us that for every dollar that is ever spent on a network during its life, 75 cents of that dollar will be spent on operations. So that's after the network has gone in and has become operational. It's the keeping the lights on cost, which, frankly is ridiculous. 75% of the cost of the whole life of that network is just keeping the lights on. And clearly that's unsustainable. So one of the benefits of the intent-based networking strategy is that we create a software overlay model on top of our network, and it's at the software layer that we now apply our changes, our policy, in our intent, as in intent-based networking. What that basically allows us to do is we apply a policy once from a centralised controller, and that policy is then pushed down to potentially hundreds of devices underneath. That dramatically reduces the operational cost phase of that network, and also has the ongoing benefit, of course, of freeing up budget that was previously used just to keep the lights on, that could now be potentially used for other much more interesting projects, which allow IT to start to become a value centre to the business that they work for, rather than just a cost centre.
So Rob, a key component of the intent-based networking is that it's embedded security rather than a bolt-on. So why is that important?
So it really comes back to the way that we've deployed security for a very long time in networking, and the approach that we've taken has always been to kind of a best of breed, whatever today's threat is, buy a box, bolt that box into the network and address that particular threat. What that's given rise to is customers that sometimes have dozens of completely independent security vendors in their environment, all doing their little bit, and not sharing any information with one another, so a completely disjointed, fragmented strategy. What we've done with intent-based networking is embedded security directly into the fabric of the network. So we've got capabilities, for example, like network as a sensor, which allows every individual switch, every router in the network to act as a sensor looking for threats, attacks, malware, and being able to, because the network is effectively pervasive, being able to detect those problems, even if that traffic happens to have been encrypted by the perpetrator of the attack, detect the threat and deal with it at the network level.
Of course. So essentially what you're saying is security is no longer optional, and it almost has to be embedded into that fabric of your IT solutions.
That's absolutely what I'm saying. That whole kind of would you like fries with that approach of having security as an option, it just simply isn't anymore. And I guess the comment that I often make to partners when I'm talking to them is, find me a CIO anywhere in any of your customers that doesn't have security as one of their top 3 care-abouts. Yeah. I challenge you, because I don't think you'll be able to do that.
So Rob, if a customer is out of support, how does intent-based networking justify a network refresh?
Well, I guess there's 2 important points here. The first is you don't necessarily have to be out of support. For all the reasons that we mentioned earlier, intent-based networking is a fundamental rethink to the way we design, implement and operate networks, so anybody can benefit from that. However, what it does represent for a customer that is coming towards the end of support on some of their infrastructure is a really good justification for why they should upgrade. In the past, that's sometimes been a problem. You go to a customer and say, did you know that half of your edge switches are about to go end of support? And the customer will generally say, thanks very much, but they're working fine. What you've now got with intent-based networking is a reason to say half of your edge switches are going end of support. And by the way, here's a really good reason why you should upgrade them.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, it makes complete sense. Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming in and giving us that little bit more detail as the key benefits of intent-based networking. And if you're interested, get in touch with Cisilion, and we'd love to give you a free network refresh assessment.